Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about HubSpot. If you're hustling in the trenches to build a business or bootstrapping one of your own, let's talk about an AI-powered tool that can lighten up your workload a bit. HubSpot's Campaign Assistant is a game changer for creating marketing campaigns at scale. It quickly turns your key selling points into a cohesive pitch, which helps you deliver knockout emails, ads, and landing pages in minutes. So let Campaign Assistant take care of the campaigns so you can get back to growing your business. Work smarter, not harder at HubSpot.com/campaign-assistant.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Juliet Bennett Rylah here with Berkley and Lestraundra Alfred, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Today, we're going to get super meta. Sorry, Zuck, not your kind of meta. And we'll spend the back half of this podcast digging into the larger podcasting industry, specifically where all the money went. Podcast creators are feeling the squeeze as companies like Spotify and SiriusXM throttle back on their investments. But first, let's talk about what else is happening in the world of business and tech. Penn Entertainment put $2 billion on the line to land the biggest name in sports, ESPN, as the front for its sports betting network. Its 5-year goal for ESPN Bet, owning about 20% of the online sports gambling market. Several authors now claim books with their name on them, but that they did not write, are appearing on Amazon and Goodreads. They suspect that these are AI-generated scams, but have found them surprisingly difficult to get removed. You've heard of quiet quitters, and now apparently we have loud laborers. This is the latest workplace term, referring to coworkers that talk a lot about working, but actually seem to do very little of it. So kind of like quiet quitters, but annoying. All right, next up, Verizon paid $400 million for Blue Jeans, which if you've never heard of it or used it, it is a video conferencing app similar to Zoom. They paid $400 million for it in April of 2020, which seemed like a really great time to invest in video conferencing software. However, now Verizon is shutting it down. Taco Bell is giving away free food. I believe it's a Doritos Locos Taco, to be specific, to celebrate the end of Taco John's trademark on the term Taco Tuesday. But before you get too excited, please know this is only available in 49 U.S. states, not including New Jersey, because in New Jersey, Gregory's Restaurant and Bar owns the Taco Tuesday trademark, and they're not giving it up.
Good for them. I think this is kind of them holding out is one of my favorite subplots of any news story going on right now. And I was kind of curious how people were feeling about this and just looked through their Google reviews. Also, generally what I learned, the tacos seem to hold up. People like them.
Okay.
There are some people who are very mad that Gregory's is costing them free tacos at Taco Bell. Just a lot going on in the Gregory's Google reviews, but hang in there, everyone in New Jersey not getting your free Taco Bell.
Yeah, hopefully you can get a free taco somewhere else, although I will say that the average Doritos Locos taco, according to what I'm looking at right now, seems to be anywhere between $1.29 or $1.69. So if you need a taco, just DM me and I'll spot you for a Doritos Loco taco if you live in New Jersey. Limit 10. I will do this 10 times. Here's another lawsuit that I found super interesting. Gizmodo editor-in-chief Daniel Ackerman is suing Apple, alleging that its 2023 film Tetris plagiarizes his 2016 book, The Tetris Effect, with exact same feel, tone, approach, and scenes. I'm interested in comparing both of these things in the near future. Meanwhile, Google's new arts and culture app includes games, photo filters, and an AI-generated poem postcard that you can send to your friends. I guess you can pick some art and a poem, and you can digitally send your friends a postcard. But finally, for once ever, it is only available on Android right now, not iOS. That is coming later. Haha, finally, my time has come to get an app first as an Android user. And finally, IKEA, as if they needed another way to take our money, the Swedish home store has launched its first Halloween decor line. And we're calling it now. You're going to see their $2.99 spider tea light holders everywhere this fall. All right, we are now going to talk about podcasting, which apparently has a big money problem. They're more popular than ever among listeners, at least. But for many creators and production companies, it does not feel that way. The money that sustained their shows has slowed. Les, what is going on here?
Yes. So essentially what's happening is podcasts are really popular amongst the end users or the consumers, which is the listener. But listeners don't pay pay for podcasts generally. Listeners enjoy listening to podcasts for free. So podcasting is an industry where its main customer base actually doesn't exchange anything financially to consume the content. And that money has to come from somewhere. And traditionally in podcasting, it's come from advertising. Now, what we've seen is that a lot of companies, media companies, corporations have invested a ton of money into podcasting over the past, let's say, 6 or 7 years as podcasting was really on the rise, hoping for a return in their investment. But what they found is that that return isn't there because podcasting is incredibly hard to monetize. So as the medium becomes more popular and more people are listening, from an industry standpoint, businesses are trying to figure out how to keep it going.
I mean, this feels really familiar to anyone who's worked in media, where the product ends up being free and you end up being dependent on advertisers to foot the bill. And anyone who's also been familiar with media knows that hasn't gone so well for the people who make those products. I mean, it seems like there's a lot that's going on in terms of layoffs. I know, NPR had some, Spotify had a lot. What else are you seeing out there? And from the podcaster side, how is it feeling out there?
The interesting thing about podcasting is that as a medium, it is really democratized in the ways that other mediums aren't. Like you go onto Spotify or you go onto Apple Podcasts and you can see shows that someone produced in their basement, literally right next to a show produced by the New York Times. And what we're finding is that a lot of shows are popping up because independent podcasters get a mic, get a voice, have something to say, and get really excited about it without really understanding the full business side of things. They see really splashy headlines like Alex Cooper got a $60 million podcasting deal from Spotify, thinking if they start a podcast and it gets popular enough, maybe that'll happen for them too. But that's not really where the industry is right now. That was several years ago when things were really booming and companies were pouring all this money into the medium. And now we're starting to see companies really scale back. Media companies who can't afford to keep it afloat, as well as advertisers. And a big part of why that's happening is because of the economic uncertainty. And we've been teetering on the edge of recession, like will it happen or won't it happen, for the past year or so. And for a lot of companies, when there's economic uncertainty, the first thing to go or the first thing to get cut is marketing budget. So these really top of funnel things where brands are trying to get awareness for a product just aren't cutting it if there's not a good ROI. So podcasting is kind of stuck in the middle of this whole big economic mess.
I feel like most of the shows that I listen to are constantly telling me to join their Patreon, which I often do. Are those types of independently funded shows going well? I mean, the layoffs seem to be Spotify, these big tech companies who, I don't know, have shareholders to please. What about the person I listen to that has a Patreon and runs a, just to embarrass myself here, Buffy the Vampire Slayer Rewatch podcast?
So definitely. I mean, I think for some creators, they can definitely have a market to exchange either bonus content or ad-free content with their audience for a small fee. What's interesting, though, is that I think your average creator on Patreon earns anywhere from like $500 to $1,500 a month, which is decent, but not quite enough to keep a really high quality podcast going. And so I think while it can help offset things a bit, if you have a big enough audience that's engaged enough, chances are most of your listeners are not going to want to pay to opt into content. So there are some really big podcasts that have a super engaged Patreon community. The first one that comes to mind would be like Maintenance Phase, which is a kind of diet culture critical podcast, has a really big, really pop-in Patreon. I would not say that that's the kind of average experience that most podcasters have when they're trying to exchange content for money with their audience.
I think this is going to get really interesting just watching this industry diversify, because you're going to see, just to draw the lines back to media, you kind of see like the middle class disappear, where you have a lot of these larger enterprises that are kind of above a lot of these uncertainties. Then you see kind of the individual creators, that would be like Substack kind of creators on the media side as kind of for that point of comparison. But then I'm interested to see if, you can find people who are in the middle turning events I know that's one way that a lot of podcasters make money, is going on the road and trying to get their fans to support them in that way, or merch. Like, there's just going to be this endless struggle to try to make this sustainable for this large class of creators, and really hope they can find a sustainable way to make that happen.
I hope so too. And, one other point that is also really interesting just about how much this medium has changed and evolved is the introduction of video. Years ago, podcasting was what you did if you didn't want to be on video. But over the past few years, as TikTok has grown, as the consumption of video content has grown, you almost need to have a video podcast and episodes on YouTube and clips on TikTok in order for it to be successful. So the way people are consuming podcasts is changing. The way creators are producing podcasts is changing. And I think the way people monetize those podcasts is primed to change as well. I think when we also look at podcasting as its own economic ecosystem, it's really interesting to see the effect that Spotify in particular has had on the industry. From, I want to say, about 2018 to 2022, Spotify invested about $1 billion into podcasting through acquiring companies like Anchor and media companies like Gimlet, and creating all of these like multi-million-dollar deals with celebrities and different talent because they were betting on having a big ROI. And what happened is that ROI didn't necessarily come, and Spotify has started pulling all of these funds back and almost created like a podcast recession. They kind of inflated the podcast market with all of this money. And then now that that's not working out, they're pulling it back out. And we're starting to see that really ripple across other podcast production companies.
So what I'm hearing is maybe I should cancel my Spotify right now.
Not necessarily. I mean, for legal reasons, I can't tell you to do that, but I am saying maybe don't expect to get a multi-million-dollar podcasting contract from Spotify, because those seem to not be working out very well. As we've also seen, with Archwell Media, which is Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's media production company. I think they had like a $20 million deal with Spotify to produce several podcast series. They produced one, decided to end the partnership early. Apparently that's a mutual decision, but I feel like there might be some tea there that we'll never know. So I think there's just a lot up in the air.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Ezra Trupiano, and our executive producer is Darren Clarke. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email. And if you want more marketing insights from Les, be sure to follow the link in today's Hustle email to subscribe to The Lead, our weekly marketing newsletter. We'll see you tomorrow.
Let me tell you about a show that I've been loving lately. It's called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by the incredible John Lee Dumas. It's available now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. I'm a big fan of this podcast. It has energy, it has value, and it's all about learning about entrepreneurship. I was just listening to an episode the other day. JLD interviewed Jay Rogers, who was such a wealth of information. He kind of went into how entrepreneurship chooses you. You don't necessarily choose it, and that failure only happens when you stop trying to win. A lot of gems in this one. So I highly recommend checking out that particular episode along with the rest. So go listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts. Hey guys, if you listen to the Hustle Daily Show on Google Podcasts, we want to let you know that the option will no longer be available pretty soon. Google is sunsetting its podcast app sometime in early 2024 in favor of YouTube Music, and we want to give you a heads up before it's too late, since that time's almost here. The Hustle Daily Show is available everywhere and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're using YouTube Music, we are there as well. If you're an Android fan, there are plenty of apps like Overcast, Pocket Casts, Player FM, and more. So just search for us wherever you decide to listen to your favorite podcasts.